Alright, so in the last video I was in the middle of adjusting something in preferences. Once you're in preferences you can go to any of the different things, but we want to be on general, and then I just put a 0 in there for keyboard increments. So 0, 1, that's pretty fine, and then if you prefer working that way then you can nudge things with the up and down arrow keys. Could have sworn I reflected that K around, so anyway I'll select it again, grab the reflect tool, click and drag with the shift key held down, and then just redo that one more time into place. And remember, if we want to see what the natural placement of this looks like, all we have to do is, and I'm talking about the kerning distance in here, all we have to do is turn this layer off, turn this one unlock, and then select everything on that layer, and this is the easiest way to just click on this dot right here, make everything black again on that layer, and we can turn this one on again here. And now that doesn't really help you much in this case. It helps a lot more when it's an inside letter, but I just wanted you to see one possible use for that, so I'll Command Z till that goes back to the way that it was, and I'll turn that layer back on and lock that layer again. And so now for kerning we just want to get in there and make sure everything looks roughly the same. So the reason that the kerning is different now is you had a straight line up here before, now you have this space in between. I still think it's a little close, and again you're just looking for that kind of overall feel. The other consideration you definitely want to think about is how big should this be in here? How much white space should you have around it? I think it's too big in here, and this is one of the challenges of working in a square, is that right now the problem is your viewer is judging this distance and this distance, and is it right? Does it feel balanced? Well, one of the ways to take away from that is to make everything a bit smaller. So I'm going to unlock both layers. I'm going to select around everything so that I'm changing everything at once. I'm going to hold down the shift key to constrain the proportions. I can also hold down the option key so that it changes about the center, and probably about right there. And it's always the new person's tendency to make their solutions much bigger than they need to be. And then you're just going to play around with this visually until it feels centered in the artboard. And if it's for print-based work, you never really know till you print it, and it's never about measuring this distance to this distance. It's just like kerning, because this goes away, so it can potentially be closer, but then this is very small, so it can be a little bit closer than it could if it was a straight line up and down here. But we, meaning your viewers, are a lot less likely to be as discriminating about it as we would if it's almost touching the edges. That's, literally one of the worst things that you can do as a designer, is engage the outer edges of your work. Okay, and then if you need to do things where you have to chop apart the letter, then you will have to outline it. Let me just show you a quick example there, and remember the Pathfinder lessons for different ways of chopping things up. For this example, I'm just going to use the word letter, and you might be wondering, why does that look so goofy? And here's the reason, is that character rotation is set to 90 degrees back from when I was demoing that. So there we go. That is now set right. And do this one in just Adobe Castellan because we don't really know what the solution is here. And let's just say it was this letter E that we needed to adjust. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. In fact, what I'm going to do until I get this exactly where it should be is I'm just going to make it a different color, and then I'll come in, nope, I don't want to do that. Actually, what I want to do is just copy, Command C, deselect, get the type tool out again, Command V, paste. So this is going to be my actual letter, I'm going to change it back to black, but I know it's the exact same letter, exact same size because I copied and pasted. And now, rather than outlining this whole entire letter and making it no longer font, all I have to do, or I mean this whole word is what I don't want to do. I just want to do the letter. So I'll go to type with it selected, and then I'll go to create outlines. Now I can do anything to this that I would to any shape. So remember, you got the Pathfinder option, you got the erasers, anything you want. So I'll make this the eraser much smaller, and let's just say that was part of the solution that I wanted. Then I can take this, move it in place, and now it might not be a bad idea to put that on a new layer first. So it looks like everything that I've done is on this layer here. So I'll create a new layer, give it a name, select this, move it up to this layer, lock the other two layers just so I can't mess with them, and then move this exactly where it would be. This way I don't have to think about where it should be vertically or horizontal. I move it exactly there. I still may do some kerning afterwards. Then I can turn this layer off, unlock this layer, go grab my text tool, swipe across here. Since I may need that later on to help me out, I'll just make it invisible, aka white, turn this one back, and then assuming that was the solution I was after for that, I've got it. And we've already talked about giving your solution plenty of white space. Another thing that you want to consider is where should it be inside the space. General rule of thumb is if the solution doesn't really have to do with space, it should probably be right in the center. You saw that example with tuna, where the idea was to make it look like someone was fishing. So that made more sense for that to be lower, right? Maybe you do something that's celestial and it makes more sense for it to be higher. But otherwise, everything that you do has a meaning, from your font choice to your placement. We've talked about the fact that you never want to stretch a font, but sometimes, and even in logos, sometimes this is done just to give something a feeling like it belongs there, and that is elongating a certain letter. Okay, for this example, let's say that for our solution, we needed to make the bottom of this F a lot longer. Now, we wouldn't want to just select the F and stretch it, because then we'd mess up all the perfect stuff that this typographer, well, this type designer, put into this part. So to stretch this, we could make a brand new rectangle, but there's an even easier way. I'm going to skip all the steps of duplicating the layers and duplicating the F and just get right to it. And if ever you outline an entire word, which I suggest you don't in this project, to be able to get just one letter, you do still need to go up to Object and Ungroup. Okay, so what I want to do is just bring this down and do it in the easiest way possible. So, and that way is you take the direct selection tool, notice nothing is selected right now, and I put the cursor along the bottom, and if you can see in that little tiny type it says path, and that lets me know that I'm not about to select an anchor point, but the actual path between anchor points. And I can click, I can drag down, and I can even hold the F key down to help me constrain the movement to down only. And notice none of this changed up here, only right there. Now let's say we were to do this example, changing this to a flower. The reason I'm showing this is because many of you may have an example that is way, way better than this, but you need to do something perfectly flowing around a letter. So I want to show you a way to do that. But I also want to talk about another important topic. When you replace something, you want that replacement that you do in here. So if we're going to replace this letter O with a flower, we want it to look like it belongs there. And if you were creating your own font, one thing you'd have to think about is not only making everything look good together for the lowercase, then for the uppercase, but what about all the other stuff, right? And that's what's known as a glyph, meaning each and everything in a font set. And it's important for you to know where the glyphs are. So let's just say that you had something that you wanted to bring out here from the glyph palette, like a copyright symbol, for example. What you can do is just start with a font, and then you go up to type, and you go to glyphs. And then you search through this glyph palette, and you bring out what it is you are after. So in this case, copyright symbol. And the key thing here is that it looks like, and I just double clicked on that to grab it. Now when I close this down, it should be there. No, why didn't that work? Let's see, double click. Okay, making a liar out of me. Maybe I have to do a swipe selection on that. So let's close that, swipe across. Nope, that's not working. Okay, Command Z, Command Z. I just want to get this selected. So there I did. I clicked on it a couple times till I got it selected, which is the same thing as swiping across it. Then we're going to go up to type. We're going to go to glyphs. And now, with us seeing that, now we should see an instant change when I double click. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there's your copyright symbol, and that's the size that it's meant to be seen at. Now, if it was meant to be larger, it would probably have to be thicker to look like it belongs here. So that's just a little note. Sometimes experimenting in the glyph palette will help. So if we were going to do this, let me just show you a quick example of how we could make a perfect circle for the flower so that we could do a perfect rotation around it. So I just go up here, grab the ellipse tool, click about in the middle here, click and drag until I get approximately with a perfect circle. So I clicked and dragged with the Option key held down and the Shift key held down. So that's going to be the inside of my O approximately. And this would take a lot of trial and error until you get this exactly right. Like I probably won't have something that I would consider acceptable after just the first try. I'm going to change the color of this one just so it's obvious, first of all, that it's below it. I need it on top because I'm going to use the Pathfinder to knock that out. So I'll go to Transform, or actually Arrange, and I'll go Bring to Front, and then I'm going to align these. As soon as I have two selections, I'll go to Properties panel, the alignment tools come out, so I want this and that option there. Select both of those, get to the Pathfinder tool either from Windows or the quick version inside of Properties, punch out the inside with the minus front, and so now I've basically created my own O. And so basically what I would want this to look like is it would belong in here. Right now it wouldn't because it's a little bit too thin. It also doesn't get smaller and wider there, but I'm going to be adding to the outside. So starting it a little bit thinner is probably a good thing. Now, so here's the main lesson that I want to get at is how could you make a petal and then rotate it all the way around and make it look good? So what you're going to do is create a stroke, and then you're going to align these perfectly using the align options, both of those. And then you are going to grab just the stroke. You're going to go up to the rotate tool, select it, double click on it to get the rotate tool panel to open up. And then you have to decide how many little things are you going to draw, or do you want? You're only going to draw one. Let's try 8. So then what you do is you take 360, which is how many degrees there are in a circle, 360 / divided by 8. I just did the math right in there, right? 360 / 8. If I tab away, it tells me that that is 45 degrees. I'll click on preview and I can see that. And then now I'm going to click copy. And then I'm going to do Command D to get another and another, and then the next one should end up right where I started, so I don't even really need that. I can Command Z that one, and now we can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different areas. We're going to make a petal,